Hi guys, welcome to Beyond Studio J. I'm your host Josh, and I have such an exciting guest for us today. Her name is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh. So Farah is a renowned Kathak dancer and teacher based in the US who also travels and performs extensively internationally, especially spending a lot of time in Pakistan. And I'm so thrilled that she's agreed to come on a little show and share some of her story with us. Let's welcome Farah.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. I forgot to mention that we actually met in 2016 in Karachi, Pakistan.
Yes.
I took one of your
But,
workshops and I just fell in love with you. That's what happened.
oh, it's mutual. It is absolutely mutual. I just am so grateful for that. Our paths crossing in that way. And,
Yeah.
and this relationship continuing in so many other ways. So, yes.
Yeah. Well, Farah, would you like to give us a quick background about your dance history and yourself in general?
Absolutely. So currently, I'm living in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I actually was born and brought up here in California. I've been dancing since the age of 5 years old, but not Kathak specifically. I actually grew up doing more Western forms, ballet, jazz. And I was introduced to Kathak actually when I went to university in San Francisco at the age of 18. And just recently, I celebrated my 25 years of practicing, training, performing, and teaching this art form.
Oh, wow. So you actually came across it when you were 18.
Yes, right. People think that you have to be very young to start a style of dance such as Kathak. But no. And sure, my previous dance training was very useful. I had a sense of my body and coordination and such, but it was such a different, not just movement technique, but conceptually the philosophy, the history, the music, the rhythms that, I was just as much a beginner as anybody. And yeah, I mean, I was 18 and I think it was fortuitous. I think starting at that age allowed me to make those decisions for myself to do this versus, as a child, your parent is saying, do this, we'll take you, you must go to this class. No, it was my choice, my desire.
Yeah. Oh, how nice. Um, well, today we wanted to talk specifically about a concept that's really prevalent in the, I guess, Indian or Southeast Asian dance cultures, the relationship between the teacher and the student, which we call guru and shishya. So, would you like to speak to us about that?
Absolutely. And it sort of, picks up right where I was saying, starting something at 18 years old, those are very formative years for anybody, I think, in any environment, any setting. And so, and especially, growing up where I did, San Francisco, very progressive part of the world. And yet here I found myself in this environment in which this classical art form was sort of being, this window into this world. And I was trained by a world renowned master, and he originally is from Calcutta, India, and very much, as we would say, old school in his style. A lot of tough love, the expectations, especially for those such as myself that had roots in South Asia. The expectation was to really, already know the language, already know much about the history. Well, I didn't. I loved my culture, but this was just, my familial practice. I didn't know it in relation to the arts. But in these traditions, even beyond the expectations of the individual teacher or guru, is whether it's in India, Pakistan has this culture as well. One, the student really looks to the teacher, to the ustad, the guru, as in many ways both a teacher of whatever craft, in this case, Kathak dance, but also sort of a spiritual leader, somebody who is giving life lessons on and off, in my case, on and off the dance floor. However, it can also be extremely challenging. And that's where it does come down to that individual guru. And I would say that in the 20 years that I was with my Guruji, he very suddenly passed, and we had a lot of ups and downs over that time. And I think it's important to talk about that because it's the challenge of how do you hold on to these practices of these tradition, of that sort of one-to-one, very in-depth study and training, the discipline, the vigor that can come with that, but also maintain and continue to discover your individual, whether that's your artistic voice or just your own values, morals, ethics that you've either already received from your parents or others. How does one reconcile that? And so these are conversations that I feel are starting to happen more in the dance world, specifically in the genres that I am a part of, but they're very important conversations, to say the least.
Yeah, you're right. I don't have a very close relationship with the classical world,
Yeah.
but even here in Melbourne, it is an issue actually. And actually, I don't think people aren't really comfortable talking about it. There is a bit of a stigma to 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 state these feelings. So it's so good that you are willing to talk about it.
Well, and I think because it comes across as, having the audacity to speak
Mm,
against. And don't get me wrong, I had immense love and respect for my Guruji. I am so deeply grateful for
yeah,
all that he gave me. However, it took me quite a while to realize that the feelings that I would often feel of inadequacy, not just on the dance floor, but in other ways, was not, it becomes, you take that on. It can become very sort of, there can be verbal abuse. I'm very lucky I didn't suffer any other type of abuse. I can say that comfortably and consciously, but
yeah,
I know there are others who take advantage of these positions of authority, of this power play. And, a student can come to that guru. And again, because it's sort of wrapped up in these packages of tradition and the you should mentality, that you just sort of let go and you submit and you don't question. And like you're saying, the stigma, if you do, then more often than not, the student is the one who has disrespected, gone against the tradition, gone against the guru, and so on. And so I believe having these conversations is the only way not to just point the finger at the person perpetuating it, but also just saying, what responsibility do we have to ourselves to start owning these scenarios and situations in a way that it is okay to feel what we feel and say, no, this is not, I'm not comfortable being in this situation and I need to make a change.
yeah. Um, so can you tell us maybe any particular incidents or challenges?
I would say, generally speaking, the challenge, again, when it came to the training on the dance floor, you can liken it even to somebody who's a athlete in some specific sport.
Yeah,
A coach will be, there's a discipline that comes across. I mean, even somebody who just has a trainer, there is that. And I actually really valued our Guruji's like intensity in that way.
yeah,
Challenge would often come in sort of the expectations to do or behave a specific way, or to um, just make a choice to always put the dance first versus family, or even friends and things of that sort, and then be made to feel inadequate, often to be um, told that what you were doing was wrong. And I think the challenge became also, it's creating these communities that then support this sort of mentality. So whomever might be receiving the intense treatment, it's not even always coming just from the guru. It comes from many who start participating. And admittedly so, I'm certain that I participated in it myself. You
yeah,
become a product of your environment. And it was also a little bit of, as I said, I was with him for 20 years. So as you're, moving through your adult life and the different phases of your life outside of just that relationship, it becomes a little bit about, so at what point do I start exploring some of this on my own?
yeah.
And a little bit of the, when do I get to leave the nest
Yeah.
idea,
So did that
right?
happen for you? Did you leave the nest?
Well, I had to make the decision to leave, and it didn't end well. It really, it became a situation where I just felt that I was no longer able to even explore my potential in the environment with my Guruji and with my Guru sisters. And I was really exhausted by feeling sad and
Oh,
not enough. Um, and so I finally had to make the decision. It was actually very soon after I became a mother. And I think that was the thing. I had become so accustomed to taking on the judgments and the criticisms, and then always going back and saying, I'm sorry, I will do this
it
differently.
sounds very toxic, Farah. I mean, I know the training is intense, and I also love that intensity that's very, and the culture is so beautiful, but it's sounding very toxic to me.
It was for me, and for some, it wasn't. Whether that was their choice to engage with it and the guru differently than I did. I mean, it takes two. I own my part in it for sure. I think that there were some very unhealthy cycles that had been created that I didn't sort of cut off soon enough.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was when I became more aware of the fact that, when somebody else is watching you, whether they consciously are or not, but they're going to learn your behaviors. And for me, that was my daughter. And I started to realize, one, I didn't want to be so sad anymore around her.
Oh, wow.
And I also wanted to be able to stand up for myself in a way that I would always encourage her to do for herself. Right? I mean, it seems so simple and so obvious, but
Yeah, that's an amazing inspiration, actually. Like turning point in life because you want to be a role model for your kids, and it makes you have a witness to your life suddenly. Actually, it makes you
yes,
hyper conscious of your actions, right? Like,
exactly, exactly. And so, I had to make a decision. I gave it sort of one last, if you will, ditch effort where I said, what can I do to salvage this relationship? And in a conversation with my guru, and it just became clear that what he was asking of me was not going to make me happy. And essentially, what I needed of him, he was not going to give. And so we were coming at it from very different places, and I just had to make the decision. And I had come to this sort of crossroads previously. And the other thing that was always so challenging is it was very ingrained in me that if you don't have the guru's blessing, then who are you to dance? Who are you to go and take this forward? It's not yours, right? It's been given to you, but that connection supersedes anything that you have internalized. And so I think I finally came to a point where I was able to say, whatever the consequence is, I know I want the dance in my life. I know that in my heart and in my dance practice, I will always honor what he gave me, but I can no longer do it in his physical presence or in this environment that, as you said, felt very toxic. And so I basically, for a lack of a better word, quit. Because I did have some formalized roles within his institution and his organization as a teacher,
right.
uh, and it was a very hard thing. And what made it, I think, even harder was 5 months later, very suddenly, he passed. And
Oh, fine. Oh, right. That's
yes,
okay.
and no reconciliation, ever took place. And you know, I also sometimes, honestly, Josh, I sometimes think it was divine intervention. It was somehow the divine was pushing me out of the nest. So perhaps I could cope with his absence um, sooner because he was to be no more in the physical sense. I mean, so I'm okay believing in those things, not as a means of
Yeah.
justification, but as a means of saying this I believe it. I believe in fate. I believe in kismet, and I believe this was all part of my journey. So, but I will say his words, his lessons do continue to ring in my ears and in my heart. Again, when I'm practicing, when I'm performing, when I'm creating, and when I'm teaching. And that's probably the place it gets the stickiest, I will admit, because some of the lessons that I think I was very resistant to, I actually do want to impart to my students. So it's an interesting, that reflection is ongoing.
Yeah.
It's like, again, think of our parents, right? The things that they tell us, and one of these days you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Yeah, yeah. So Farah, once you did actually leave your guru, so what did you do? Did you set up your own dance school? Did you start performing? Like, what was the trajectory of your
Yeah.
journey?
Well, so the challenge was I live in the same area as my Guruji and his institution. So I was very much seen as, again, I was the one who went against what the tradition dictates. And so I had to tread softly. I had to, I didn't want to come out and be like a competitor. I mean, again, I wasn't leaving him out of anger and spite. I was doing it out of what I felt was best for me. However, again, it was my livelihood. It was my source of income. I had made a lot of sacrifices to make it so. I knew I wouldn't be happy doing anything else. So it was this combination of being very sensitive, and yet I needed to do what I needed to do to survive. So I did already have a show that was in the works, and strangely enough, the premiere date was less than 2 weeks after his passing. And so there was this cloud even that loomed over it. He knew of that performance even
Was
prior.
he going to come? Like, had you invited him to your performance?
We were not on speaking terms at all. So no. Um, and I questioned, should I cancel the show when he passed? Does it come across as extremely disrespectful? Um, I opted not to cancel it. I felt that if anything, this is my homage to him. Me carrying out the dance is the greatest respect I can offer. And yet again, it was very clouded because I had left on the terms that I did. I was asked by his wife not to come to the memorial. So there was a lot of intense baggage there. Um, but to answer your question, so I was treading softly to begin to teach more in sort of a one-to-one situation. I didn't set up any formal institution. Um, and yet it was tricky because so many of the students that knew me were from his school, and they were saying, we want to come and study with you. And I said, no, please don't. And then I said, okay, maybe I'll just tutor you, but you must stay enrolled in his institution. But then that was also got too muddled, because then they would come to me and, what is a teacher going to do? Give feedback, give guidance. And in some ways that is correcting something that they're learning in the other environment. And that became a sticky point, because I'd be essentially trying to change what they were learning, and or vice versa. If they were told something by me,
Yeah.
why are you doing it that way? Well, Farah Didi told me to,
Oh my God.
So I just, I took students one to one and very case by case. What were the circumstances in which they were coming to me? Some really felt a deep enough connection that they wanted to maintain that relationship with me, and I just had to accept it, as hard as it was, as much as I knew it would tarnish my reputation in many ways. I just had to really listen to my heart and my moral compass. Um, because they were at a point, many of them, that would say, well, if I don't come to you, I'm not going to dance anyway. And the thought of them leaving the dance, when at least they could maintain that connection if I were open enough to do so. So, I essentially was able to slowly, in a way, at a pace that felt right to me,
Mm,
uh, continue teaching, build my own organization, and perform, and all of those things. But it was not easy. It was
yeah.
not easy.
I mean, it sounds bizarrely complex. When you simplify what it is, it's just that you have learned dance from a particular school and now you want to start your own school. Like it sounds so simple in this way, but actually it's like unbelievably complex, isn't it? Like,
Is.
shouldn't be
Well,
that hard.
here's a little twist. I remember, I'm very close to my parents, and my father asking me as I was getting more students, and he would say, what are you going to do? And he would insert a particular student's name, or something. What are you going to do when this student says that they want to go off and do their own thing.
Yeah.
It was tricky because then I felt this sort of possessive nature like rise in me, like,
Ah,
and I remember acknowledging that feeling and then also saying to my father, well, I do hope that our communication is consistently strong enough that it doesn't blindside me. And that, I mean, ultimately, what would I have wanted is that my Guruji gave me his blessing to say, yes, go out, lessen your commitments in the institution, go, you know,
explore, do new things,
exactly fulfill
learn
this.
from new people. Why not?
Exactly. And yet I would have still maintained that relationship with him. I still would have maintained, however, maybe modified my commitment to his institution. That would have been my ideal. So when my father posed that question, I said, well, ideally, one, like I said, I hope I never get blindsided, but also I would hope that they would want to maintain that connection and,
Yeah,
explore.
right.
Um, and never feel that it has to be a choice,
Mm,
but then it is a slippery slope. And this is where I say that some of the things that he would say to me, and I still actually do feel that they weren't always applicable to me based on my age, my depth of commitment, the number of years I trained with him. I wasn't getting any younger. I was just shy of 40 when I stopped my training with him. And yet I hadn't really launched a solo performance career, right? So, I mean, there was now, then, here I am, fast forward, I'm in my own organization and I have students telling me they want to go do this, that, the other. Well, they're like 15, 16 years old. And I'm thinking, okay, I understand the desire, but you haven't spent enough time honing the craft, training.
yeah.
So that is the challenge. It's like I can empathize, but I don't want to lose the integrity
Mm,
of the form and what I do still believe are the fundamentals and the foundation
yeah.
before somebody is ready. And I think being ready is very subjective. I'm not even saying it's only about age, but it's challenging. It is very challenging to appropriate these different lessons.
Yeah. But do you find yourself at all holding on to the traditional sense of teacher and student now that you're in that position? I mean, I'm sure you'd be more flexible and more open-minded, but in a way though, did you still find yourself conforming to that traditional relationship?
I do, and I battle with it, to be honest. It's funny because I've had experiences where I had a student who wanted to do workshops, actually ongoing training with somebody in India while they were also studying with me. And initially I was like, yeah, no problem. Go ahead, do it, do it, do it. And then I thought about it and I just thought, for the same reasons that I said about tutoring a student, even though they were of the same style and lineage, if you will, where there would be more overlap between myself and whomever they were taking classes with, that I had likely trained alongside with. There were still going to be some distinctions that were going to make it more challenging for the student, frankly, and even for myself and the other teacher. And I started to think about that with the student who had requested this. And initially I said, yeah, go ahead. And I said to her, I said, I really believe there's a couple of reasons I'm now rethinking what I initially said to you. One is, there's going to be these stylistic differences. You're going to get frustrated because I'm going to be correcting the way that you're learning, say, to take a chakra from that dancer. And then she's going to be doing the same of the way I'm teaching you. And you're going to be the one quite literally caught in the middle. And then it's also, I really believe that one of the things I do value is the bond of the student teacher relationship. And I feel that with the right openness, there is such depth that can go to, that I do hold that very near and dear. And it's not to say I am the only person that you can have that
Yeah.
relationship with, but
Oh, I think it doesn't have to exclusively be with you. Is that what you're saying?
yes, however, when it comes to at least this art form, I
Yeah.
do believe that go as deep as you can in general. It's the whole idea, even if you compare it to the jack of all trades, master of none,
Uh,
right? And
yeah.
so I do believe that this art form has so much to offer that you can go so deep in it and find it can fulfill all these areas of curiosity within it, the music, the dance, the expression, the emotion. If you go through that and let me go on that path with you, it will be your path to self discovery. If you are dabbling here and there and everywhere, you will get experience, but will you get the depth of what this form and what I'd like to think I can offer you? So I'm not stuck in that place. I try to be evolving in it. I also, again, I think at the heart of it all is communication and trust.
Yeah.
And if I am open to my students, um, and letting them feel comfortable communicating to me, and also telling them when I'm feeling a little uneasy about something, and I'll own that. Look, this is a little bit of me still stuck in this place that I was before, and I
Yeah.
want to be honest about that. I'm not ready to completely shed that because I do believe there's some value there. So let's evolve through this together. I try not to be too black and white about it. It's tricky. It really, sometimes I wish I were, because then
Yeah.
you
Actually, because I've never had that kind of relationship with
yeah,
a classical teacher, but I think for the first time, I'm really understanding how it cannot be a casual relationship. But that's it's a nice quality actually. Like it doesn't have to be a controlling relationship either or a toxic one, but
yeah.
it can't be a casual relationship. I think I'm really kind of understanding that at a deep level today for the first time. Would you agree with that? Like,
Absolutely. And that's the challenge, I think, with the relationship, because it is such a profoundly deep and beautiful bond that can be formed. It's when it becomes manipulative and controlling is when it becomes toxic.
yeah,
And that's, how to navigate that. And again, I still feel very young in all of this. Um, but I can even see it from my vantage point, how easy it is to slip into it, whether it's because you as a student were treated a certain way. So
yeah,
what are you going to take and pass on? Again, I keep likening it to a parental relationship, because generally the way we were raised, we're either going to embrace that as the norm, or sometimes let the pendulum swing in the other direction and say that is exactly what I don't want.
yeah,
And so, yeah, it it is not casual. It can be, and I have plenty of students that are very, show up once a week, and that's absolutely fine. But those that want to go deeper, it there is I wouldn't call it a formality, but there is something that forms, that is much beyond something casual.
yeah. Oh, wow. Well, Farah, thank you so much. This was actually so enlightening to me.
uh,
And what's really struck me actually is how it's so easy to say, oh, it's toxic. Like when I hear it as an outsider, not just from you, from other people here in Melbourne, my reaction is, oh, that's awful. It shouldn't be that way. It's toxic. But for the people for who are living through it, the complexities and the layers and it's actually not black and white. Like I really get that now. Like well, but good on you. Like for the strength that you have and the honesty you have to yourself to make new choices.
thank you. It it was extremely, like I said, it was a very difficult place to be, ultimately, for the many years that I felt that challenge. um, but even to make that decision was very, very hard. But I was lucky to have the support of my family, my husband, my parents, my siblings, who honestly were really so patient and tolerant for so many years until I made that decision. And, you know,
Wow.
and a community of friends and even artists that, you know, just really were there to support me and hold me up in a way that made me know that ultimately what I was doing was actually in the best service to my guru, to the dance, and ultimately to myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Really, such an eye opener.
Well, anytime I clearly, you know, enjoy it's always a period to just any opportunity to reflect on these experiences is something that I'm always happy to process, continue to process, and share whatever I can with others.
Yeah. Oh, Farah, thank you so very much.
My
Um,
pleasure
wishing you all the best.
to you as well.
Um, yeah, and well, we're going to finish off this interview by watching a beautiful clip of Farah dancing, which I'm sure you're all going to love. Bye for now.
Thank you.